He's spent over 30 years in the clinic and on the field, supporting both pro athletes and weekend warriors. Now, sports physiotherapist and Coreshorts creator Greg Bay is taking you inside the locker room with the show Injuries, Innovations, and Insights.
Good day, everybody. Welcome to Injuries, Innovations, and Insights. My name's Greg Bay, sport physiotherapist, and today we've got a great show for you. Today we've got a very special guest who spent 5 years playing varsity basketball at Simon Fraser University in Burnaby, British Columbia. During that time, she obtained her psychology and kinesiology degree, and she led the team to 2 national championships. Well, I can tell you that Dani Langford, or Danielle Langford, is with us today. Which do you prefer to be called?
Probably Dani Langford. If it's Danielle, I usually feel like I'm in trouble and my mom's talking to me or something. So Dani's good.
Well, we'd like to welcome Dani Langford to the show. Now, listen, I got to start out this conversation by saying, how cool was your 2004-2005 basketball season where your team went 45-0 for a win streak and won your second national Canadian title? How was that?
It was pretty awesome. Feels like a different lifetime ago at the moment. But it was incredible, obviously, being in your last year and having been in the program for 5 years, being able to end it with an undefeated season. It was pretty awesome. It was a very exciting environment in Winnipeg against the home team and everything as well. It was a pretty good memory for sure.
Memory. Okay, so final game for you, and you win the tournament MVP as well. Now let's tie in one thing that's so cool, that your dad, Bruce Langford, still is and was the coach for Simon Fraser. And he goes on to win the C.I.S. Coach of the Year that year as well. What a special time that is for you, your father, and your mother as a family.
Definitely. Again, you're bringing back all these memories that are definitely a lifetime ago. But it was a special time for sure. And I started my career up at SFU actually prior to my dad being there. So I was recruited by Alex McKechnie and then played for 4 years for my dad. So it was a very special way to wrap up my career and finish off with basketball. So.
Well, what I look at that as far as your career is that it often creates so many learning capabilities and strategies, not only in discipline and being able to have strategy, but also the team aspect that goes in, especially for you as a leader. And when you were finished playing, you also went on to become an assistant coach at SFU for a while.
I did. Well, it was shorter time period than I was planning on. I ended up actually only being assistant for half a season or not even. And that was partly due to physio school. What happened was I had gone earlier on in the year in September. So my season was done and the plan was to be an assistant coach for them. A lot of people thought I should be an assistant coach in life because to follow my dad's footsteps and with leadership skills and having coached a lot as a player. However, I wanted to become a physio and so that coaching got cut short a little bit based on traveling across the world to Australia, as you know, and so forth. So.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting is that we educate and coach every single day. So there's sort of an inherent capability of skill set that has so much crossover. And I know that when we take a deeper dive into your current project, that there's so much overlap of experiences from your past and then working the whole injury prevention side of it in. So that's going to be exciting for everybody to be able to create a better understanding of. So maybe you could sort of share a little bit of information about, you went to Curtin University and got your master's, you came back. What was your process and what was important to you when you got back for your career?
The unique part is I got to start my career, obviously, with where the idea of even being a physio came from. So you were my physiotherapist at a very young age. I don't actually know the exact years, but I think it was like 11 or 12 I came in. And it was after kind of getting treated and experiencing that I got the idea that I wanted to be a physio. So I actually knew fairly young that I wanted to be a physio. That got reinforced with doing shadowing, and I came to went to take your kids to work day, but I went with you to work instead of going with my parents because I knew I wanted to be a physio. So that all just reinforced it. So it was quite neat coming back from Australia and coming back from that big adventure that was actually pretty quick and pretty sudden turnover to take off and move across the world. Once I finally came back 2.5 years later, I got to work at Sport and Spine, where it all started. And so I think starting, I just wanted to be a sponge as much as I could. I knew that I was in a good place and in the company of people with knowledge like you, for example. And so being able to learn and absorb as much as I could and feeling confident that I was in the right place to be doing that.
Yeah, I think that, starting out, it's important that you get a real good ally of trust. But I also know that, even when we were sort of having some treatment sessions when you were younger, you would come in and you'd want to know what was wrong. You'd want to know what the plan was. And then what impressed me the most is you really wanted to know the why behind it. And like how many 15-year-olds want to know why, So it's not that you just land somewhere. This has been a whole process of getting into your brain to understand what makes it tick, and circles back to really trying to get a full understanding about what type of ownership as a young athlete and now as a therapist you have. It's pretty, for me, I love to surround myself with every opportunity of youth and mentors and parallel colleagues, because there's so much to be gained from being around different types of brains.
And it's funny that you said that, the why around treating, because I don't think I would have known that about myself at 15, to be honest. So it's interesting to hear that perspective as well. But I honestly thought I got my why from starting working from you, because when we would do our education sessions and you would talk about range of motion at different joints and putting out the cigarette if you don't have enough big toe extension, and just looking up the chain, and that's the foundation of how I treat. You can locally have a look at what's going on, but the reason is, why did this happen in the first place? We could just clean it up here and then they would keep coming back, which obviously isn't the goal of physio. So looking up the chain and trying to communicate that to a patient is important, because if you're looking up in their back or you're looking elsewhere and they're like, well, actually it's this area, it's just an important communication. And so I start that often with my clients and patients. I say, so this is where we're looking at today, but we will have a look at the whole picture to find out why this has happened in the first place. So it's interesting that you commented on that.
Yeah, the different things that you pick up, right, that you might not even be aware of, right? So you came back, and again, from different experiences, you ended up at some terrific mentoring places. Really, as a younger therapist, like what did mentorship mean to you?
Mentorship means a lot to me. I value it a lot. I can feel that I'm the type of personality that goes out and kind of actively seeks it a little bit as well. But at the same time, I think it's very important to show appreciation. I don't think that anybody is forced to or is required to give me their time. Their time is precious. So I kind of think of it as a little bit of a formula of appreciation and with persistence. So there needs to be some underlying persistence a little bit. And I think most people that have unfortunately or fortunately dealt with me would say I'm fairly persistent. But then I also think you have to have a confidence and a proving that you've earned the right for their time. You don't want them to make them feel like they're wasting their time. And you want to be appreciative of that. So I'm very fortunate for as I reflect on different mentors that I've had, and I understand that I'm very fortunate with different people that have come in and out of legs. And even if they've tried to get out, I usually email them and say thanks and say keep up that connection, because I think it's important.
Yeah. So, generally speaking, there's different people at different times, and we're sort of building up the sort of the formula as to how you get to this amazing program that you're putting together. So tell us about some of your previous experiences that have played a big role in sort of formulating your thinking behind, what your project is.
So I think, even backing up from the project a little bit, I think trying to find, as a physio, where your niche is and what makes you happy. I'm somebody that wants to go to work, and I enjoy going to work, and I have fun with it. But I think there's been different times along my career so far that I've noticed that maybe I haven't been enjoying it as much. And I've actively done something to change that. And so I think that it's important that one, you find out what makes you happy. Two, you create a little bit of niche around that, and then you can actively plan what type of clientele you want to see. You can control those factors. And I think I first got exposed to, this is a funny story. So up at SFU in my last year up playing varsity, we found out that Steve Nash and Rick Celebrini were up working out in the gym. And we had them, I was sitting on the side, they were working out. They would start with like a little bit of physio on the side, and then they would come out and do some active practical pieces. And it was important afterwards that I could ask some questions. So I observed, and then I went up and I said, excuse me guys, is it okay if I ask some questions once their session was done? And so Rick stepped back. I didn't really know Rick at all. And then Steve stepped forward to answer my questions. And I said, oh, sorry, Steve, it's not you that I want to ask questions to. It's actually Rick that I would like to ask some questions to. And he was very generous with his time. And that was kind of when I got his contact information from there. So that was my first exposure to connecting the clinic and the court. And so seeing how transferability and being able to help athletes do what you do in the clinic, but also experience it on the court to help them learn better. And so that was impactful to be able to say that's a piece of the puzzle eventually that I would like to be doing for sure. I think my experience in Australia, there's a lot of Pilates happening in Australia. And when I first came back and I was done, I'd gotten accredited and everything, I started to work with Pilates. And it was important for me, and I learned a lot, and that shaped how I wanted to be as a physio. So starting kind of locally and making sure that we have the proper foundations and everything built there, and kind of working our way out a little bit more. So I do believe both of those factors. I had a wonderful mentor in Margaret Bowden as well with Pilates. And so that was very beneficial. Manual therapy is important to me, making sure we have proper quality of tissue and tissues are sliding and gliding it properly. Deb Treloar and Carol Kennedy were a huge impact in my career. And they helped me through the different levels. I worked at Treloar. The original plan along the line was I was hoping to be able to kind of be an owner there eventually. Life tends to take you in different routes sometimes, but they were incredible. I guess more recently, I had more interactions with Rick. Rick was the one that approached me about being able to come to Fortius, and there's kind of some unique stories around how all those paths crossed and everything. But he was the one that asked me to come, and originally I said no. I had just found out I was 6 weeks pregnant. I was at Treloar. I was happy. I was getting ready for my intermediate exams. Once the intermediate exams were all done, I actually I went away to Hawaii and got some downtime. And there was a text that came up, or there was something that came up on an Instagram or a social media piece. And I found out that somebody had been hired at Fortius after, and they were announcing it. And the feeling that was in my stomach I don't know, just didn't feel right necessarily. It bugged me a little bit because I had said no to some pieces. So I think you asked me about mentors earlier. And so mentors can open doors for you. They can open opportunities. You have different forms of mentorship. With Deb and Carol, it was very one-on-one and skills and learned an absolute ton. And then there's other people that open doors and think of you with different opportunities. And so that would be kind of my more recent, in the past, more mentors, and traveling into more recent times. So both Rick and Randy Celebrini. Randy Celebrini is the one that introduced me to Alex McKechnie, and two other big ones from Fortius that have invested some time in me and that I'm appreciative for are Jerry Ramajita, and he's now with Golden State, and Paul Gamble as well. So my life has been full of mentors at different levels, and again, different roles along the way. But those are a few that have had a big impact on where I am today.
Yeah, and I get to share that. My mentors are Carol and Deb, and even Bill Trelaw from a business organizational point of view, and you start to realize that it's not by luck. There's a certain amount of rite of passage that when you take on sort of a student's role as a mentor in a mentor situation, that you end up having to be able to meet the criteria of the willingness to be mentored as well. So a lot of people ask for mentorship, but the backfill of the production is that they're not necessarily doing the work that would then allow for that mentorship to be optimized. And we'll take a look at most of our positions and jobs as we go through our careers. They don't come from resumes, they come from direct relationships that are built on somebody really knowing somebody really well with a super high degree of trust attached to it. And that can only occur over time by having these strong relationships. So, I certainly think that, you've always tried to put yourself in a position not to just seek it out, but to maximize every one of those opportunities. And that still brings us around to formulating a bit of your brain of saying, listen, now that you've been, how many years in the career?
I've been saying 10 for a while, but when I calculated today, it's actually 12.
Yeah. 12 years in, and there's a certain amount of past, but to live in the present for you right now is also a very, very busy time, because one of the challenges of being an innovator is that your plate is always full and that you're always have a list of things to accomplish. And part of that is then taking a look at time management as well, right? So maybe you could speak to really how the Core A.I.M project came about, and then we can take the top sheet off and start talking a little bit about where it currently is and where it's going, because I just love it. And thank you for inviting me to your talk last year. You and Alex, it was like homecoming, but it was really a proud moment to be able to see the sharing of information that you get from one of my great mentors in Alex, and also one of my great young mentors in you, is to say that you've got such a great, meaningful project and where you're taking it. So let's talk about how you got stuck in on working with Alex and this Core A.I.M project.
I think it began in 2018, and I was sitting working on my computer in the foyer at work, and I had met Alex the year before just through Randy. So we kind of chatted a little bit, but he came around and he poked his nose in, as he does, and he's like, "What are you working on?" And I was like, I want to do a clinic, like a coach's clinic, for basketball coaches from a physio standpoint, and kind of trying to connect the clinic and the court. And so, because I know that as a former athlete, I used to get different cues from coaches and like getting up on our toes. And now I know what that does physiologically to the body and how it puts different joints in different positions and whatnot. So I want to try to bridge this gap a little bit, and do this coach's clinic. And he looked at me and he's like, I'd do that with you. And looking back in my head, I was like, oh, he shouldn't have said that. He again, I'm persistent. And so we ended up, long story short, we ended up doing a clinic together that next summer. So it would have been a year from that time, because he's only in Vancouver every so often, based on the season. And so we ended up organizing it. We ended up meeting and building the curriculum together for the course. And it went really well. I didn't know him super well then, as well as I know him now, but watching him working with the athletes and watching him talking to the coaches, I could see he was having a lot of fun. And even afterwards, he actually thanked me for allowing him to come and join and whatnot. And so I patiently waited for about 2 or 3 weeks, because I get very excited, and I was like, this is going to be great. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. And didn't want to scare him away quite yet. And so I ended up, in 3 weeks later, emailing him a bit of a business proposal per se, and saying, so this is what I think could happen. I think this could be big. I think that we could end up being educational platform in kind of a certain niche market. And yeah, that was kind of the evolution of it. The next summer, I can't believe it's been this long that we've been working on this, to be honest, but it takes time, as you know, as being an innovator, and you being one of the ones that have modeled this for me with Coreshorts, and seeing how that's evolved over time has been very cool. And so you, more than anyone and more than me, know how much time it takes to create and take an idea and take it through production. But yeah, I think the next summer we ended up doing another one, and slightly different target. So similar message, but different language, or I guess similar language, sorry, but just a slightly different angle for practitioners. And so that was the one that you came to we ended up doing it at the gym at Fortius. And yeah, so from there it just kind of got started rolling. And to be honest, having COVID and actually having a little bit of time right now has allowed me to be able to spend more time, and Alex to be able to kind of discuss and develop what we've been developing. So yeah, it's been good.
Very good. And just for those people who may not know, and we keep referring to Alex, but Alex McKechnie is an amazing physiotherapist. He came over from Scotland, I think, in '74, and has got roots and ties, because I think one of his first jobs was up at Simon Fraser University as the head sports therapist up there. It's been 20 years now, 21 years this year that he's been in the NBA. I can't believe it's been that long. We've worked together on many projects, and I've been to many courses, and we've shared a lot of common education. He's certainly one of my mentors, but he is now the vice president of really health and wellness for the Toronto Raptors, and he's still the head of sports medicine and sports sciences for the Raptors. So he's been a real foundation, not only to create a new job category for therapists, but really to also produce outcomes that haven't been seen before. And those outcomes aren't just based on luck or fluke. They're based on sound best practice principles and pushing the limits of knowledge, and then also being able to have a brain that synthesizes that as well. And we certainly look to bring Alex on another show. But right now, we are talking with Dani Langford, who has put together with Alex this Core A.I.M athlete integrated movement, right, is what A.I.M stands for. And maybe tell us a little bit now about really what it is, because I understand that you're really looking at sort of 3 primary pillars, if you want. You've got courses, Core A.I.M courses. You got your sweat stance system I want you to talk about. And then certainly the athlete, coach, sort of trainer connect stuff that you're doing as well. So fill us in, you figure out where to start. Tell us some information. I know that it's going to be up and running this fall, but really give us the information about some of the whys behind it.
I think it was built for a couple reasons. Alex and I value sport in our lives, and we understand the importance of sport for a young, growing athlete and all the life lessons that you can learn from it. You mentioned that earlier about being in sport and my career at SFU and how that helps kind of set you up for life with different challenges and everything. So we're big believers in that. And I think seeing youth athletes right now and seeing the landscape that's kind of evolved over time that's happening, it's definitely changed from when I've grown up. There's more early specialization. And from some of those patterns, research has showed that there's increased rates of injury levels and dropout rates. And so for us, it's a hard landscape to change for sure. There's different groups like the IOC 5 years ago released a consensus statement. The American Orthopedic Society of Sports Medicine, they also released consensus statements and guidelines to try to help parents and coaches and practitioners to be able to give recommendations in this new environment and promote multi-sport athletes. So they're trying to do their part in education, and I think we're trying to do a little bit of our part as well. So trying to, in this new environment, help create systems and help create an approach to how to manage the youth athlete and how to no matter who you are, whether you're a parent, we want to have resources for parents, the athlete themselves, practitioners, coaches, strength and conditioning. So everybody can be working off of a common language, a common system with some common tools to be able to help their journey and help ensure longevity within youth athletes.
Yeah, I was talking on a previous show with Mario Bazzini, who was one of the principal researchers on the FMARC 11 that became the FMARC 11 Plus ACL prevention protocol. And the primary origin of that was really taking a look at what could be functionally appropriate to get buy-in. And one of the biggest challenges there was the fact that you had to be able to create a sell to the coaching staff of the importance of it. And I so love the A.I.M program because it's not a off the side of your desk thought. It's a primary thought about educating coaches. And that is so relevant because of the fact that in the end, at a youth level, coaches carry so much influence on that whole development and injury prevention for players.
Yeah, I think coaches are in a prime position to be able to impact athletes. And obviously, I've had a ton of that's another side of thing from a coaching standpoint of mentorship at different pieces and coaches that have made an impact in your life and influenced you as an athlete. But if we can also get them to influence their movement and their bodies, that would be great. Because right now it feels very reactive and it feels very inefficient in my mind. If we're teaching athletes to jump and land, whether that's to be getting a rebound, whether that's to be blocking a shot in volleyball, something like that, we should also be teaching them prior to that a squat position and how to do that and how to turn that into a dynamic movement, and that those are the same things. And so this program tries to address that, tries to start to trigger. Coaches watch movement all the time. They're very technical, but they watch a certain component of it. So if we can get them to just shift their lens or add another lens on to be able to have some education around positions that aren't ideal, movement patternings that aren't ideal, that then they can start to help these athletes early on in their career. And then it's a continuous process. As athletes are growing and their bodies are changing, it's also important that the coaches realize that and have education around that factor as well. So, yeah.
Well, and what's cool, from your thought is we take a look at the Core A.I.M, again, is the athlete integrated movement. And it's not just about a sport. It's actually about creating the ability for optimal movement patterns. One of the coolest aspects that's relatively new at high-level sports therapy is the fact that you need to treat the older players different than the younger players. So as a therapist, we know that, especially therapists that are experienced in sports, but it doesn't mean to say that the coaching staff or some of the traditional sports sciences staff develop individual care plans for players. And I don't like the word age. So when they say, that's an older athlete, I don't believe in measuring age, but I do believe in measuring duration. And the reason is because duration, 600,000 repetitions at 2 to 5 millimeters off is a completely different result from a physics point of view than 600,000 repetitions that's 1 millimeter off. So when we take a look at duration could come at a young age or it could come at an old age. And our job is to reverse engineer the older players as best as possible without changing then performance to give them longevity and optimal performance. What you get to circle back to is the other end of the scale that says, why don't we train and figure out how to get a process where we don't have really messy mechanics? And so we're changing the complaints of knee pain in grade 7. We're changing these repetitive strain injuries that really aren't because of repetition. They're because of repeated biomechanical errors that also bring a whole set of different barriers because of what age represents in maturation. So this project you're talking about is a project for the masses around human movement. And I get so excited because you have modules set up, don't you? That you go through modules. So it's not just a course. It's actually a real integrated, specific motor learning capability. So tell us about those modules.
So we basically, when we were developing the product, we've developed a screen, which we'll be able to talk more about the details of that in the fall. It's being piloted and that sort of stuff right now. But with the screen, Alex and I are very much about the process. And so it was very important to us both to be able to provide the background, provide the foundational education or knowledge around also just delivering the screen. We didn't want it to just be a screen, here you go, and that can be, we want it to be able to utilize to its optimal ability. So we had to surround it with modules and different units within that series. And so it's called the Foundational Series. And we have different streams of it again. So we have a practitioner stream, there's a strength and conditioning stream, and then there's a coaching stream. And the unique part about, or the differentiators, in my opinion, for Core A.I.M are a couple factors. Having Alex and I working together and collaborating, we're two different generations, and I think that's unique. I don't know how many kind of combinations there are like that. I think that from an athlete standpoint, when they come into a team or an academy, let's say, and if you can have a system that's built around them that everybody knows how to do the screen, and everyone has different roles within the screen, though. It's not that we're taking jobs away or blending. So everyone has different roles to be able to get the athlete to their targeted goal. So a unique piece is we tried to build this from 3 different perspectives so that there could be buy-in. So it creates opportunity for collaboration amongst communities. One of our big things we want to do is connect communities. I think you probably saw on our website, connect, challenge, and elevate. So connecting communities requires kind of a common topic. If you go to a party and you don't know somebody and you're trying to talk and create conversation, as soon as you find a common topic, then communication can grow out of that and conversation can grow. Right. So by having Core A.I.M in the system that we've developed and the tools that we're developing to try to make it a little bit more efficient, they now have a common language and a common topic that they can all talk about, which is hopefully going to encourage them to talk, which will only benefit the athlete's journey and trying to make it more efficient. So then how does the modules, and I love it because it's not, it may be created by people with a designation as physiotherapists, but we're really looking at chiropractors, athletic therapists, massage therapists, trainers. Like you said, there's a strength and conditioning component. You've got coaching component. So we're not biasing to a profession. We're really creating an open door for collaboration so that we're all being able to sort of create a progressive, meaningful language as we move forward. Agreed. And really the commonality is, what do I have in common with a coach is we teach movement. And so through the modules, we go through different factors around that and helping to enhance your skills around teaching movement as well. And so yeah, anyways, that's kind of the gist. Again, I'd like to be able to kind of just go through the whole piece, but in February, when we're going to talk again, we'll be able to kind of elaborate probably even more. So. Oh, and that's going to be exciting because we get to share with everybody about the process and how it's gone so that we can all join in on the learning experience as well. Tell us a little bit. I'm excited about, you've sort of coined the name, but sweat stance. What's that all about? Sweat stance, yeah, so we've trademarked the name. It's what I wanted when I used to shoot or play basketball. We had David Cox, who was a sports psychologist that used to come in, and we used to write different things on our shoes as a kind of cue or a cognitive trigger to be saying, okay, like for me, it was park it, because when I would miss, I would get in my head a little bit, and it was just like, park it, leave it in the parking lot, and get back to what you have to do. So part of me was like, well, why can't we have a term? Like transference is obviously very important. So why can't we have a term that we're trying to use on the court to remind people about physio? Even though we're trying to do more things, doing physio on the court and doing more things to enhance transference that we know promotes better motor learning and all of that. A cue or something that just triggers them, because it stands for symmetrical weight, efficient, active, adaptable tension is what SWET stands for. So it's essentially like, instead of like ready stance or triple threat position that you would have in basketball or different things like that. And it's a dynamic movement. It's a state of mind. I would say it's physical as well as within the body and as well as the brain. And I think from a sweat stance standpoint, it's something that needs to be taught. In my experience with working with athletes and young athletes, it doesn't feel good to be down and active and in a depth position. So you need to educate them. And so that's what the sweat stance program or stream is I've developed a 6-week program course for athletes in teaching sweat stance. And so we've developed a whole booklet on it around education and mindset and the importance of positioning and kind of being a whole athlete. It ranges from good teammate. It's a cool booklet that we're very proud of, and it's in athlete. It's in youth format. Sorry, so the language and pictures and quotes and all these sort of things, and it's a cool product for sure. Well, it's interesting that you reflect on so many experiences that you've had, and we take a look at certainly the biomechanics that we know, and with the research. We tap into motor learning, we tap into trends, we tap into
the cognitive approach to not only learn movements, but also, in cueing. So the psychology part, we're really tapping into the kids, the coaches. It's really about creating, like you said, and we talked earlier, this shift in mindset. And part of that comes by being well organized, well supported within the product of Core A.I.M, and easy access. So where can we find information about Core A.I.M?
The website is www.coreaim.ca. So core, COREAIM.ca. And the product, like we said, the goal is to have it out before Christmas. And so there will be online information with regards to the courses that we are offering in through there. COVID has obviously shifted things for sweat stance a little bit, to be honest. And so that's going to have to take a little aside and see where we are in the fall with all of that. But the program itself is developed and ready to go once the world's ready for it.
Yeah. And this doesn't mean it's just in person, right? So you're going to have the ability for modules that somebody around the world can tap into this. So this is not just about the fact you live in a 50-kilometer radius. This is really going to be available for everybody to tap into.
Yeah, we want to create a community. It is an online program. And so it will be an online course that you can take. And the goal is to create a community with like-minded individuals who are excited about youth and sport, and are, like we said, wanting to shift things from being less reactive and more proactive along the youth development lines.
Well, that's it. So when should we, first of all, let's look it up. Easy to do, and sort of get the information. And then when should we keep having people circle back to it?
Yeah, so have a look now. There's lots of information around, like you said, our philosophy and what we're looking at trying to create to do. But the goal will be to have it up before Christmas. So kind of December or so, if they circle back, there should be a lot more information with regards to the actual course and how you can access it and all of that information.
Well, that's great. And I can tell you that certainly we'll be not only keeping an eye open, but I'll be signing up for that one as well. And I'm really excited in the sense that, you're building a legacy. This isn't a course. This is actually a movement. It's a movement about movement. That's a lot of movement, but it's what is in our fabric, and that you're putting the time and energy and effort. I can only imagine, as I did with Coreshorts, where you work, you get home, you do a lot of work. It's always in your brain. Your spouse has to tell you, hey, you got to take a break from that. And then you got a family to support. How are you managing all these different hats that you're wearing right now?
I think it's challenging for sure. I think with regards to managing, I think it's about a network. It takes a village. I am very fortunate. My parents allow, as well as my husband, obviously, allow me to chase and have these big ideas and have the ability to chase them and try to develop them and make them into something more than just an idea. I realized 2 or 3 years ago when I told Alex that we could have this idea and do this, and he just kind of shook his head at me and he's like, I'm trying to retire, man. But he didn't say no, but he said he was trying to retire. Mm-hmm. And so it gives me time to be able to do that. And it is, as you said, you go into clinic and physio and you work, and then you come home, and it is a constant on your mind of how can you develop this and that, and spouses, we are very appreciative for them because they're very supportive, but hearing constantly over 3 years about your ideas is what it's all about. But I'm sure it can get a little tiresome sometimes. And yeah, so it's funny when you talk about kind of legacy and you mentioned that word, that makes me laugh a little bit because I feel like I'm just starting as a physio, to be honest. I have so many hats, from mom to wife to parent to daughter, and I feel like there was 5 years of fog. Having a family takes time. And so I feel like between either being morning sickness to too exhausted to not having a ton of self-care, that those aren't the perfect, I don't know how to explain it, but perfect environment for innovation and for fostering extra and doing extra. So a lot of those times were kind of more just circling, getting through the day and whatnot. And I feel like I've come back to life a little bit again. In the last, Maddie's, I have 2 children. So I have they're going to be 7 and 5 in the fall. And so probably the last 3 years since Maddie's been 2, I feel like I've been able to kind of let my mind go and spend time doing this, thanks to my husband and to my parents helping out an absolute ton. So.
Well, it certainly does take a village, because when you're innovative and you're creative and there's a little sort of zone of chaos that gets attached to some original thinking, we need the support, because it's easy to get almost sucked into not lifting your head up and taking a deep breath and taking a moment to circle back into these other aspects that are important in life. And I think that for all the innovators out there, it's this perspective thing is easy to say and tough to do, because it's part of our fabric. Sometimes we don't choose where we go. It just goes there because of the fact that it's part of our fabric. And so it's really good also to be able to have discussions with like-minded people, so that you can often talk about some of these challenges that you come up with, because sharing is caring, and it's really important, because it can be a lonely world at times in your brain, because everything in the house is quiet and your brain's still 100 miles an hour. So for sure. Gosh, I tell you what, Dani Langford, from the days of, 12 years old, your dad coaching, we got to throw Frank Chan in, because you just have to, and his young family that he's got now.
Yeah.
But it's really a case of me being completely selfish about gaining my energy from those people who are up and coming and have the vision for the future, and then still connecting in with the people that get me really excited, my mentors. And my primary mentor is 83 now, and we just discussed 4 different papers the other day. And how exciting is that for us to be in fields that are moving forward, and we're part of the movement, literally. What we can do is we will absolutely circle back. But hey, everybody, go to that website, www.coreaim.ca. Go look it up, and there's a lot of good information on there already. Dani, anything else to wrap it up?
No, I think, thank you for having me. Thank you for the opportunity to chat and share. And like I said, I look forward to being able to share more on the next stages. As you said, it is busy, and you never really imagine when you have an idea what it actually takes to get it. Every time you find another step, it feels like the list gets longer and longer. And Alex always comments on, just send me another list of what I'm supposed to do. So we have a little joke on sending lists. But I think I'm just appreciative. I think this is a great, another innovative idea that you've had, is developing this to be able to have like-minded individuals having conversations like this, to hopefully anyone that's listening or be able to plant seeds and help give people confidence in following through on ideas. It does take work, as you know. So thank you. Thank you for bringing all these like-minded. I've been enjoying listening to them and watching them for sure. And we are very lucky to have mentors that we have that are constantly raising the bar of the physio profession, of what's expected or what we can do. And really the sky is the limit. And I think mentors like you and Jen and Alex and Rick and everybody have shown, and Jerry, that they're still growing and lots of new challenges. You've started this new challenge as well with this podcast. And yeah, so just kind of keep going after it, and the sky is the limit if you go for it and kind of work hard at it. So
sky's the limit. Yes, the movement about movement, and we're grateful. So we'll check back in, Dani, and certainly we'll stay in touch. And you know, a lot of our listeners I know will be clicking on because it's absolutely relevant to everybody. So thank you very much, Dani Langford, for joining us today on Injuries, Innovations, and Insights. All three were accomplished today. So it's been a great show. I look forward to speaking with everybody next time.